Hello and welcome to another thrilling episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ashleigh Early,
And I'm Kasey Jones.
and today we are so excited to have Amanda Koziel joining us. Hello, Amanda.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Happy to have you. So for those of you who don't know, Amanda is the founder of the VIP Woman, and she's developed her mentorship and coaching platform for ambitious women in business that are looking to define their voice in the workplace and achieve leadership potential and success without the burnout. Good Lord, does we all need a little bit of that. So make sure to check out the VIP Woman. I'm super excited to talk with you today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, no, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So one of the things that I want to kind of use to start out when we start most episodes like this is just kind of tell us kind of what's your sales story? How did you get into sales?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's so funny. So I always loved people, I've always loved conversation and meeting different people, but back when I was, in high school, I don't ever think that I would have ended up in this career. I think I always wanted to be like a broadcast journalist. That was my dream, right? But the way that I got into it was when I was 18. I was a hostess at a pizza place. Loved what I was doing, but I was like, I kind of would like to make more money. I was always like a hard worker, and so I was like, what are some other ways that I can make more money? And so my mom to this day, she will not let me take credit for it because she's the one that found the ad for a customer service position in the newspaper. And so she said, check this out. It's listed as a customer service position. Looks like they have a base rate. Looks like it's some sort of sales thing. So I go to this interview and honestly, had no idea what the hell I was even walking into. It was kind of shady the way it was set up. But needless to say, when I got there, I ended up finding out that it was a direct door-to-door sales company called Cutlery. And for any of those out there that have heard of it before, it's a super high-end type of color that I actually still own to this day, so I love it. But yeah, so I just kind of was like, why not? Let's try it. And so you started off with people that you knew, and then just getting referrals from that. But essentially, you were selling cutlery door to door with no leads. You got the training, but it was really my first dose of entrepreneurship at 18.
No, it's I'll say this. I think we've talked with a few people who got their start in Cutco. It's remarkable how many people start in Solar or Cutco or something like that. I still have a Cutco ice cream scoop. That thing is amazing.
Oh my God, it's amazing. Yeah, or the peeler or the shears. Yeah. I have all the accessories, and I still have literally my whole homemaker cut or my homemaker set. They're the best.
It's one of those things. It's one of those things door-to-door stuff where you're like, I don't know if it's that good. Cutco's actually pretty legit.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible.
For all the shtick. It's actually pretty good.
Again, I had no idea what the hell I was doing, but I was like, sure, I'll try it. And then I ended up being really successful at it. And it was one of those things that it ended up being what I would do when I would come home on college breaks. Mm-hmm. So I went away to school in state, but over the summer breaks and winter breaks and any sort of holiday break, I'd come back and sell knives, and I'd make really good money doing it. So that's how I really discovered that I liked sales, that I was good at it. And then that's what led me into my first career out of school as well.
I love it. I think that's amazing. And I think, we were talking a little bit before we hit record. There is something about the whole door-to-door stuff that oftentimes you just have to be kind of young and naive to get into it, especially as a woman. Once you get a little bit older, you're like, oh my goodness, this is so unsafe. What am I doing? Yeah. But it really, you learn, you've got to think on your feet. You don't have any support that's with you. Right. And so if somebody asks you a question you don't know, what are you going to do? You can't, it's not like, being a sales development rep now where you can then go ask your boss, hey, how should I respond to this email? It's like you are in someone's house while they are asking you tough questions and you're trying to make a deal. And so I think it really forces you to get quick on your feet and pretty resilient. And I was joking that I don't really count it as my first sales job, but it kind of was. My first one was door-to-door political canvassing. And so it's asking for money. And it was really brutal, honestly, but it helped me develop a really thick skin, and wouldn't trade it for the world. So I'm curious, okay, so you mentioned you did this on breaks during college, and then what did you do afterwards?
Yeah, so I did that all through college. So because I literally found that job, I think the summer before my freshman year of college. And then through that experience, like I said, I learned that I love sales. And so I ended up applying my senior year to a few different pharmaceutical companies because I heard, pharmaceutical sales is great money, you get company car, all this stuff. And the crazy thing is that I also graduated in '09, which I don't know if you ladies remember, but that was the height of the recession.
Yep.
So like nobody
You're-
was hiring.
You're talking to another '09 grad here.
Okay,
I love telling
awesome.
people the story. My husband graduated in '08,
Okay.
and I went to Santa Clara University. And so they did a survey of all, and this is a pretty good liberal arts school, but it's liberal arts primarily, like a really good engineering program and a lot of liberal arts. And when my husband graduated, according to like the student newspaper, something like 85 to 90% of people who graduated had a job lined up. '09, it was like less than 20%.
Yeah,
In 1 year, it went from pretty much everybody had a job to ain't nobody got a job.
totally.
It was
Yeah,
nuts.
and that's what, and I was in the College of Communication as well, so I mean pretty broad, and so it was like pretty much people had just expected like you guys probably aren't going to get jobs, so to just like get used to it. And so I was honestly, and I went to an amazing University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, which is a super great school. So
My in-laws went there. Both of my in-laws are
cool.
Champaign-Urbana.
Yeah, so so I mean the like prestige was there, but it didn't matter, right? There were like not a lot of jobs out there. So long story short, I did end up getting a job offer as one of a few in my college, honestly, that got a job offer at Eli Lilly to be in pharmaceutical sales.
Wow.
And I was literally, it was my dream job. I mean, at the time, it was literally like my definition of a dream job. And so I still remember like the day that the recruiter called, the Eli Lilly recruiter called and offered me the position, and I legit cried because it was like
that's great.
It was a big like monumental moment because again, like this was a dream job, and then I also knew how hard it was to even get jobs. So I was super fortunate, and then I ended up staying there for 4 years.
That's fantastic. So, tell us a little bit about the experience of working in pharmaceutical sales. Like Ashleigh and I both come more from the software background. And again, we've talked about this a little bit before hitting record, that there's some sort of rumors or associations with pharmaceutical sales as it being absolutely like, high income, tons of potential, but potentially kind of hard for women because there is this sort of sexualization of women in these roles. And
Like,
I
did
don't know,
either of
we
you
all
watch
hear the
Scrubs?
stories. Yeah.
So I always picture Heather Locklear as the
Yeah.
pharma rep on Scrubs.
Yeah.
Or have you guys ever seen, so I would get asked about this all the time, but have you ever seen the movie Love and Other Drugs with Jake Gyllenhaal?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if there was was there a leading lady? I don't remember, but it was more about him getting the
Yeah.
pharmaceutical job. And so like, it's so funny because when I got my job offer, that I literally was, because I think it was like the same year that movie came out. And so I was asked about it all the time. They're like, oh my God, is this what your life's like? Like you get all these free, like, big, huge like vacations that you take doctors on and like all these glamorous events. And so I always laugh about it because the pharmaceutical industry is so much less glamorous than what people actually think it is.
Yeah.
Definitely, maybe like that in the '80s. I think that movie was kind of based on the pharmaceutical industry in the '80s, with like the glamour of it. But what hasn't changed, and what I thought was really interesting, is the type of woman that they tend to choose for these positions. And so the reason I can say that is so when I showed up to my training class back in '09. And again, I have nothing but great things to say about the company. I honestly think I was with the best of all the pharmaceutical companies out there. But when I showed up to training, it was funny because I like looked around the room and it was no surprise that like half of them I felt looked just like me. And then half of them, were like cheerleaders from their schools. And that kind of has been known about,
Yeah.
pharmaceutical industry. So it wasn't like anything that I guess I was shocked about, but it was like right there in my face, like all beautiful women, right? And so so with that being said, like once I got through training and like actually into the field, what I will say is that, being a woman, and at that time a very young woman, 22 years old, you're going into doctors' offices with, men and women, but primarily men, right? Physicians, that are, 3-4 times your age, and you're trying to show them that you know your stuff, right? And so what I can say is that I felt like I definitely got tested a lot. And there's two sides of that, right? Like on one side, I'm really thankful for it because I think that it really did teach me to think quickly on my feet, like make sure I knew my stuff, and also like just have that ability to be able to not get defensive, and really just be able to handle those uncomfortable situations as they came. So I was really grateful for what it taught me, but it also just highlighted the fact that it's definitely something that happens, is this, just this attitude towards women. And if they happen to be attractive, like that, all of a sudden that means that maybe they aren't as intelligent, and there's this need to like grill them, or this need to like question their intelligence. You know what I mean? So again, I'm thankful for it, but it also really highlighted the fact that that is a real thing that occurs in sales.
And it is really interesting when you think about it, because I think in sort of the software side of things, women in sales are the rarity. And so I'm curious, were the people, since most of your peers were women, were you also being trained and like managed mostly by women, or was there sort of a gender power differential, not just between you and the prospect, but also kind of at Eli Lilly?
So I would say that my training class, there definitely were men in there were men in
Yeah.
it. But the trainers were primarily men. And honest to God, like during the training process, I did not feel any sort of discrimination at all. I think that it was really just being out in the field and interactions with the clients where it really became apparent. But luckily, but I can't say that that's true for every company. You know what I mean? Luckily, I did not feel that at Eli Lilly. But I can't say that that's the same for every other company out there.
Well, I think that's worth bringing up too. I mean, in a lot of situations there, you might have a perfectly safe and supportive culture in the office, but so often in sales, you're not in the office, whether virtually or otherwise, and you don't have control over who your prospects are. So, I mean, can you tell, I mean, I hope there aren't any really horribly egregious stories, but how did you handle when you end up in a situation like that, whether it's, some extra grilling or heaven forbid, something a little bit more aggressive, and you are kind of on your own in this foreign environment?
Yeah. And so the good thing is so luckily I never had a very direct encounter with something super inappropriate. I have heard stories of colleagues though that had, but what I will say is knowing that it was always a possibility. Like I always knew that it was a possibility, being a woman, being a young, attractive woman in general, when you're, going and meeting with clients, there's always that risk of like, how do you handle a situation when there's an inappropriate like gesture, or, somebody asks you, like a client asks you out, like how do you deal with that kind of thing? And so one of the things that I've really, I've actually very much heavily coached this to women that I've coached over the last few years, especially that are young women coming into sales. I believe that it's all about, in the beginning, how you handle and present yourself to that person in the beginning. I feel that if you are really good at building that kind of peer-to-peer rapport immediately, I know that you're very much less likely to get those inappropriate gestures, because they can tell that you're not just a pretty girl that's like a ditz coming in there that's just going to be a doormat and let you say whatever you want to say. So that honestly is what I would speak to, is that, and I've coached women specifically on this. It's all about the tone that you set from the get-go. And so I'm thankful because I really like made that a point, that every new client that I met, like I wanted them to know like, hey, I'm professional. I know my shit. Like this is a professional relationship, but like it's never going to be anything more than that. And I think that some women unconsciously don't know how to do that. And I think that that's where they find themselves in those inappropriate situations, not because they're giving off the invitation, but just because they don't know how to set the tone the right way from the very beginning.
Well, and I think, I think he brings up just a bunch of really, really great points, but I think it comes down to a lot of the kind of personality characteristics that get women into sales are some of the things that I think can potentially lead to those sort of not really mixed signals, but not setting the appropriate tone, right? You're really good with people. You're really friendly. You smile a lot, like all of those things. Some of those things that can be a really big advantage in sales are some of the things that if you don't also um, add in a more kind of serious tone, can be misinterpreted as you being overly friendly or a little flirty or those kinds of things. I think that's a very, very good point.
Well, yeah, because let's face it, I mean, it's just out there. It doesn't matter what environment you're in. Like, there's always going to be people and individuals that when you give them an inch, like they'll take a mile. So it's like
Absolutely.
just protecting your boundaries and just setting the right tone from the very beginning. And it's like, I even remember a couple years ago with my last sales team. So I was with Eli Lilly for 4 years, great experience, but then ended up moving on. And the last 6 years I've been at a publishing company and have a sales team, had a sales team, all that. And, I've coached women specifically on this because we're cold calling. Like, it's the same type of thing where we're like meeting with men, that are business owners, and it's the same thing. Like, it happens everywhere. Yeah. And so it was really like having that conversation with one particular woman on my team who had felt like a couple of different clients had come on to her. And so it's like, we really need to get honed in on, okay, when you first sit down with somebody, like, what are the actions and things that you're saying to make it very clear? Like, this is a professional relationship. There is no invitation here for any like flirting, you know what I mean? And some people just don't know that, right? So it's not a fault. It's just like, it's an important thing though, that I think not a lot of people talk about. And just a real conversation that especially women in sales need to have.
Yeah, and I think it does take having a very intelligent and like, I don't know, empathetic female boss to give you that training, because I don't think that a man could deliver that training in a way or that coaching in a way that wouldn't come across as condescending or kind of inappropriate. Like, I think it would just, I feel like I'm just putting myself in the position of kind of a younger woman. I feel like any male boss that was like, yeah, he's reading you as being flirty, I don't know that I would be able to take that feedback very well. I think I would get really pissed off. So that woman on your team, I think, is very lucky to have you.
No, that's a really good point. Because and I can think of, I've had both, right? I've had male managers and I've had female managers. When I had the female managers, it's also just women in sales. Like, I don't know how it was like on the software side, but sometimes you find yourself in even like potentially like dangerous situations, like not even just with, like, people coming on to you, but I remember a part of my territory when I was in pharmaceutical sales. I'm from Chicago originally, so I'm actually moving back there in a month, but part of my territory was Gary, Indiana, which is like not the fanciest of areas. And so again, like, just a woman, like, being aware of like, okay, like, because being a woman in general, like, it already, sometimes you are a target for certain things, just the way it is out there, right? And so I remember my female manager, to your point, it was a lot easier for her to have those conversations with me and be like, hey, Amanda, like, here's what I want you to do. Like, before you go into this part of town, like, these are the precautions I want you to take. This is how I want you to carry your bag. This is how I want you to get out of your car, into your car, So yeah, I think
that's amazing.
I think that you're right. And I never really thought about it that way, but that's what I've loved about like coaching women, right? Because I get it, and get that there are different dynamics that they don't really teach you in mainstream or like a normal sales conference. Like, I'm sure when you girls met at the sales conference, that probably wasn't one of the talks on the agenda. How to be, how to handle this type of situation.
Well, and even and it's I think it's a little bit bigger than that too. I mean, I think many women have had this conversation with a guy at some point where it's like, hey, if it's after 8:00 at night and you're in public and you walk to your car, do you do anything differently than if you're going to your car in daylight? No. Yeah. Pretty much every woman is going to do one or two specific things to keep herself safe.
Yeah.
For me, it's, I always have my keys out, and my keys are between my, my first two fingers, just in case.
Yeah.
Not like I would ever need to, but it's just habit at this point in case I need to stab someone in the eye. It's
No,
just
it is.
things you get ingrained into you by your mothers and your aunts and your
Yeah.
sisters and whatever else.
Or
that-
you have one kind of sketchy, scary experience and
it drills into
you're
you.
never naive again. But I don't think our bosses teach us this thing. And
No,
it's
and
amazing that you do.
I worked at a big company, a reasonably big company, 1,500 employee software company, and there was one night where we decided we wanted to host an event at the office, and it would go late. It was going to go until like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and this was a company in San Francisco, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's no big deal," da 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 da. And I kind of had to flag to our boss of, "Hey, this area changes after
Yeah.
8, 9 o'clock at night, and the nearest major public transit that most people take is about a half-mile walk away. Can I get approval to tell everyone on my team to expense an Uber?" And did not get it. It took me like being really blunt and saying, I don't want these 22-year-old girls walking through Soma at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point, because my experience was, again, working in software and living in Portland, but flying down to San Francisco for an event. And my boss was like, "Oh yeah, just find a hotel that's kind of close and not too expensive." And I had spent some time in San Francisco, but I didn't really know it that well. And I wound up accidentally booking a hotel in the Tenderloin, thinking that I'd gotten a really good deal on a hotel.
Right on market, I'm sure.
Yeah, the Tenderloin is it is not a good neighborhood. It is a very
it is
sketchy,
the sketchiest
scary
part of San Francisco.
It truly is. And I remember just like
every dirty stereotype.
And I remember walking to that hotel and being like, and I'm both partly naive and a little overly cocky as a female. And I remember being like, "Oh my God," and being so nervous. And they, and it's like, and I remember saying something to another woman on my team, and they were like, "Oh my God, they let you book that hotel?" And I was like, "Well, no, they never even said anything." And they were like, "Oh," and it then became this thing that we all did for other women in the Portland office of like, "Oh, you're going to your first trip to San Francisco to go to headquarters. Here's the neighborhood where you can get a hotel. Please do not go beyond this." And I just don't think men often, it just doesn't occur to them in the same way.
Or even something as simple as, why do women need bags with them at all times?
Yeah.
Like I had someone like, "Oh, just leave your bag at the hotel." Nope. Not going to happen. Why? You really want me to say this? Really? Yeah. You want me to explain to you why I need a purse with me at all times? Okay. Yeah. No, I've got tampons in there. Oh.
I know. I was just at a conference, literally, this was just a couple months ago, and the facilitator actually did bring up this topic, and it was so illustrating, because she asked all the men in the audience, how many of you have ever felt threatened when you're walking home, alone at night? And it was like, 5 guys raised their hands. And then she asked the same question to all the women in the room. How many of you have ever felt threatened when you've been walking home at night before? And like 99% of the room.
Yeah.
And whether or not it's just kind of that awareness that we have, you know what I mean? And like you said, like that kind of society does as well. It's just like, as when you do there are different things you need to think about, so yeah, I think that it's such a good conversation to illustrate and to illuminate more that, like, as a woman in sales, like, there are other things that need to be talked about more. And it's nice when we have a female boss or a female mentor in the company, but if we don't, like, it can be a really confusing thing to navigate.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it does make me think a lot of like, I don't think that there is this training for up and coming kind of leaders or managers of like, hey, you're a guy, you're going to be managing a woman, or even you're a white lady, you're going to be managing men of color. Like, like how can you be more careful about thinking through all of the ways that, experiences that you're comfortable with might be different for somebody else. And, again, it's like lots of little things come up that if you haven't lived it, it's really hard to be aware of it.
Right. 100%.
So I'm curious, I know pretty early in your career, you kind of rose through the ranks and were managing a big team. So what was your experience like of one being, you know, leading a big team at a pretty young age, but also trying to navigate some of these considerations of how do you manage people that their experiences are maybe different from yours? What's sort of your perspective on that?
Yeah. Yeah, so this last role that I was in is a sales director capacity, and at the most, I think my team was around like 29 at one point. It was always hovering between like 25 to 29 people, and it was always a very wide range of individuals, which is really what I loved about it, because it was everything from the girl in the 20s to the man in his 60s. So I really had to get good at interacting with, coaching, leading, developing a very diverse group of people. And I think that what I've learned being a manager, being a director, whatever, just having a team the last few years is when people know how much you care, they're a lot more willing and a lot more likely to respect you. I feel like even more so than necessarily the accolades or the awards you've won, within the company. Because I can say that, there were some individuals that were in the same role that I was in, had different teams, and they were recognized, for all these accolades and all these amazing things they've done on the sales side. But being a good salesperson doesn't make you a good leader, doesn't make you a great manager. And
Yes.
so that was really what I learned, what I heard from, my peers and also the people that I coached, was the difference between that. And I think that it's this, empathy that you have, understanding of people, actually desiring to get to know people and doing it because you want to see them succeed, not because you want to see yourself succeed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I do think that's such a, I think we talk about it fairly regularly in sales, but I don't feel like we have great answers for it. If somebody that's really good in sales, it does not mean that they are going to be really good as a coach or manager. And the same is true of sports, right? We see all the time, basketball coaches that are 5'10" and clearly would never make it in the NBA, but are really phenomenal coaches, and vice versa.
Wayne Gretzky is the ultimate example. He is the best hockey player of all time. I mean, I know Chicago. I'm assuming we've got a Blackhawks fan.
Yes, loosely. Sure. I used to live right by the stadium, so I would.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I'm sorry. I think Blackhawks have the best atmosphere of pretty much any arena in the U.S. right now.
It's pretty awesome.
Oh, so jealous. But Wayne Gretzky is the ultimate hockey player, and he actually was a coach for the Phoenix Coyotes, and he didn't suck, but he wasn't anything special.
Right.
It was just,
it's a different skill set. It really
totally.
is.
It's a very different skill set.
That I not only learned that myself, but I saw the difference in the managers out there that weren't really being as well received by their teams. And so, I just think it goes back to what helped me, because again, it was such a diverse group of people. It was really just getting back to wanting to understand them each individually, as a person, and really what their true goals and aspirations were as a person, and not what they thought they had to achieve, or not what they thought the company wanted them to achieve. But people, at the end of the day, all people want to do is be heard, and I feel when people feel they're heard, it's so much easier to build a relationship with them, to have that kind of communication where they respect what you have to say. And that's really what being a good coach is all about, being able to not only deliver information, but for it to actually land with somebody, and to be able for it to land with somebody, that base level of trust and respect has to be there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I'm really curious. Okay. So you were in sales, and now you've started your own business, and now you're coaching. So tell us a little bit about that. How did you make that transition? How did you make that decision? And how's entrepreneurship treating you so far?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I always thought that I was an entrepreneur because I owned a franchise. That's the publishing company I've been with and had a sales team with, and all that was with a publishing company. So we ran our own franchise. So essentially, technically, we were entrepreneurs. We were 1099s and all that. but it's a lot different when it's your own baby, when it's like truly your own, brand and your own mission, your own company. So anyways, but really the reason that I had formed the VIP Woman was, I always knew I wanted to impact more people than I was helping just on my immediate team. And I wanted to be able to develop a platform to do that. But more importantly, like it was really built upon what I felt that was really missing throughout my entire 10 years in my career. Like I felt that one of the biggest things that has been missing is that as you get more successful, I feel like it's almost backwards because I feel like you get less support.
Yep.
And I feel like, especially for, I now know for all companies, like even if it's the best company out there, when you're wanting advice or you're seeking mentorship or you're seeking, just any sort of like feedback, there are a lot of things that are actually still like really uncomfortable to talk about with your immediate boss and with like your immediate supervisor. And so I honestly, like, there's a gap. Like I truly feel that there's a gap in the marketplace on support for high performing, like high level leaders in
Yep.
organizations to get like that unbiased support and feedback and advice where they don't feel like they have to step on eggshells, where there's not like biases and when there's not like hidden agendas, let's face it, with people in our own companies. It's just whether people want to admit it or not, it's there.
And beyond that, there's a strength that comes with vulnerability, and you can never be fully vulnerable with the guy who signs your paycheck. You
Right.
just, a guy or a girl, just to be specific, it's nearly impossible to be completely vulnerable and transparent with your direct supervisor. It's just a bad idea on a number of levels. You can get close, but you can't get all the way. But
Right.
you've got to
It
have
always-
that resource where you can really open up and get to the root of what the problems are and start to work through them.
And with
It's like
somebody
work. It's like work therapy.
It is work therapy.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, right. And it's like, and that's where it's like, you have to be, I always joke around because like, I do know that there's a very big difference, between a, business life coach or a, therapist.
Yes.
And granted, I've been a sales coach, so I get it, like that, yes, like things come up that you obviously want to be that support for people, but I'm always very clear, like,
Yes.
I want to help people that are wanting to take the next step forward and not like stay in what they're in, right? That's not, I'm not trained in that. That's not my thing. But like but that vulnerability can sometimes come out a lot of different ways, right?
Oh
but
yeah.
to your point, like the vulnerability aspect, like because I experienced it firsthand, at different points in my career, will cause me to go get outside coaches and outside support and outside mentors. I formed the VIP Woman as a platform to do that. So that's why it was formed. And yeah, I mean, it's honestly, I feel like, the people that have seen me, it's now been about 6 months or so since it's like officially been out there. But I can honestly say people are not surprised. Like they've always known that, this is my passion, is coaching and mentoring like women in leadership roles, and just being able to have like raw conversations like we just had today. You know what I mean? Like that's honestly what I'm trying to foster. With women in leadership positions, which can also look like women in sales. Like they don't have to have a formal title, but like women that are in a role where they know they need the support and don't really feel supported with their current company. So
yeah, and I do hope, and I think we're seeing more of this, but I hope it's a trend that continues. That now there are a lot of companies that are starting to hire these outside coaches, because I think they're starting to recognize that most of the time, your boss is somebody that they've reached this level because certainly they've got leadership, qualities, but they have become experts or professionals in a particular sort of discipline. And so, yes, they might be good leaders and they might be good managers at the same time, but that doesn't mean that they are necessarily professional coaches, and they're most focused on like, kind of the bigger picture. And you play a part in that, but it's always a balance, like Ashleigh was talking about, of you can't always be 100% honest with the person who signs your paychecks. You're always balancing sort of the interpersonal stuff, the internal politics, the knowing what your boss is trying to kind of achieve, and balancing that with what you are. And so getting that sort of outside help and coaching, I think, could just be so invaluable.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, since I've done that so much myself, like that's why I believe so much in the VIP one, and like why I started was because I sought that out, and I know how much of a difference it made for me. It was huge, it was absolutely huge for me throughout my career. So yeah, and I agree with you. I think a lot of companies are looking into that more. Ironically, today, I literally, like just an hour ago, got a request in my email about coming in and leading like this kind of discussion with their sales force, who I think is a smaller like event company with all women. But so it is cool to see that I think companies are realizing like, hey, it's valuable to actually like bring in people to have this conversation, like get some outside perspectives too. Cause like, let's face it, all businesses, like we can get really stuck in like our own little box of thinking. And like, in my opinion, like the business owners out there, if you're not bringing in outside like influences and resources, like you're really doing your team and your employees a disservice, because I mean, that's how like new ideas and innovation happens, is by like bringing in outside ideas, right? Doesn't mean you have to take it all, but like we do need to like get out of our own box of thinking that like the people in the company are the end all be all for every single thing, that happens. So
and
diversity
no
of
matter,
thought.
yeah. And no matter what kind of company you work at, there's always going to be like gaps in knowledge and experience. And so working hard to like be self-aware about it and fill those gaps with outside experts, I think is very wise. And it sounds like you are solving a very real problem that I think all of us can relate to.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that's why too, like, I think you're aware, I'm doing the 21-day You Were Born to Lead Summit. And honestly, it was like, to me, it was almost like a research project. Like, how can I gather like 21 and more just different experts that have industry knowledge, like they're known as experts in their field, but like get them together in one place so that women can actually hear some of these outside influences, because some women aren't exposed to that yet. What I've learned is like women like us, I feel like we're kind of immersed in it because like we're already in it. Like we know about how to find and like be resourceful and like look for experts, you know what I mean? But like actually a lot of corporate women don't. And so I was surprised by that. But like the more people I ask, like it's actually a lot of people don't know where to look. Like they don't know where to go for resources. So yeah, so I appreciate you saying that. And that's like why I formed like the 21-day Born to Lead as well.
Yeah. So how can listeners find out about the 21-day Born to Lead program?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can definitely give you the link. It's bit.ly. So I think you guys are familiar with that. And then it's just / Born to Lead 2020. So that's like the link. And I can share that with you guys as well.
That's great.
We'll add it all to the show notes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So we'll put it all in there.
Yeah. And if people ever want to reach me, it's super easy. They can just email me at hello@thevipwoman, and it's WOMAN.com. And I have it on my Instagram and all that too, but I know a lot of people prefer to just like reach out to me directly if they're curious about anything. So that's how they can find me.
That's awesome. Okay. So as we sort of, start to wrap up, we have, like we told you, we end every episode with our sort of quick list of questions.
It's the lightning round. Let's be honest.
It's the lightning round.
It's the lightning round.
Yes.
Love it.
So to get us started, what's your morning routine?
My morning routine. So that would be, so for me, I love to read. Like if I don't feel like I read in a given day, like I feel like something's drastically wrong. So I try to read about 10 pages every morning with my coffee. And then I always have a journal next to my bed. And I don't have like a set prompt. I know a lot of people are big with like, this is what I specifically journal about. For me, honestly, it's more like a brain dump. So I just kind of get out whatever I'm feeling, if there's anything residual from the night before, and then just like thoughts about what I'd like to happen in that day.
That's great.
I love it. Pick one person who's had a significant impact on your career.
That would have to be my first manager with Cutlery. So when I was 18, Mike Muriel. And I would actually, on that note, I would challenge like everybody listening, if you've never like, if you ask yourself that same question, if you've never written like a letter to that person, like I would so encourage you to do it, because it was one of the most rewarding experiences, was to actually like write him a letter and thank him for what he did. So, but yeah, he would definitely be top on my list.
That's a wonderful idea. I feel like we should talk about that more.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your pump up song?
Oh, easy. Girl on Fire, Alicia Keys.
Oh,
There we go.
Firebird
good.
by Katy Perry. That was a little more cheesy, but
Yeah,
definitely fun.
but it is a good one.
Yeah.
All right. What's one thing you wish you'd learned earlier?
One thing I wish I'd learned earlier, that everything is going to work out, and that like even when you think you have everything perfectly planned, it's probably not going to turn out that way anyway. So to just like trust the process.
Got it. That's true.
I'm a controller
Yeah.
by nature, but I've learned over the years to like surrender more to like just what, and honestly, I've never landed like not on my feet. So just trusting that everything's always going to turn out the way it's supposed to.
Sometimes there's a somersault before you hit the feet, but the feet always come.
There are like highs and lows, but like I'm not on the
Yeah.
street, right? Like you're not recording me like living outside, so I think it's been okay.
Yeah. What's your favorite sales book?
Sales book, so this is just like a book in general, but I recommend to every single person that I coach on audio. It is Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by Harbecker. The best like book, like I feel like in the world, because it's all about your mentality about receiving money more than anything, and how to like
awesome.
look at yourself as a successful person. But you have to get on audio, because there's something about his voice that just like, I just feel like it's so impactful. But I have both.
That's great. I listen to lots of audiobooks. So I'm adding that to my list.
Yes, it's a must listen.
All right. What's one way someone could have been a better ally to you?
Better ally. You know, I feel like this goes back to the idea of women, just remembering that like we don't have to be catty in the workplace, that like we don't always have, there's no like scarcity, right? So like without getting into the details of the situation, I just think like I would just tell that person like there's no scarcity, we can all be successful, so let's just all like help rise up everyone, instead of like trying to drag people down that are doing well.
That's great. And I think this is kind of an easy one. What's one way you're working to be a better ally to others? I feel like your whole business is kind of being an ally to others, but what's one specific way?
Yeah, I mean, and I appreciate you saying that, but I just think that it's like really being okay with actually like unapologetically talking about what you're facing at work, like the struggles that you're going with, like being okay with actually talking about it. But you know, you have to find those people that you trust. And I think it's like finding that right person for you. Like, I don't think that there's one right coach or one right mentor for every woman in business and sales. So just finding that person is, you know, what I'm trying to get the word about. You know, it's not like they have to come to the VIP woman, but it's just getting this conversation going about, hey, like, look for an outside support. Like as a woman in leadership, it can be a really lonely place. It can be lonely. So like encouraging women to look for those people so they can actually have authentic conversations like this.
Yeah. I love it. And lastly, but certainly not least, what's your guilty pleasure after a bad day?
Well, so one thing you might not know about me is that I'm a ballroom dancer. So sometimes it can be like to an obsessive level. So, but that's definitely like, that's my vice. I mean, I love to dance. I'll share with you a couple videos later for you girls. But
you have to.
But hang on, are we Latin or more like ballroom?
Well, Latin is actually technically one of the styles of ballroom. So yeah, so but it is ballroom. So that's what I'm trained in. And I compete with a professional. I'm not a professional, I'm an amateur, but I compete with a professional.
That's amazing.
So that's something that I do, you know, just on a fun, but also like totally is a vice for me. But then I love desserts. I'm a girl that like is always scouring the city for like the next low cal, like vegan, right? That's a little healthy. I don't know. That's what they tell me. But like, any dessert I can find is definitely going to be my guilty pleasure as well.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, I definitely want to see these videos as like an obsessive Strictly Come Dancing fan, not Dancing with the Stars. The BBC version's way better. Like as an obsessive Strictly fan, I'm like, oh, I've been trying to get my husband to
It's
go do
addicting.
classes with me forever.
It's like what you I mean, it is literally a world that sucks you in. I was just this last weekend, I did a big show in Houston, Texas, and then I have another one in 2 weeks. So it's like, it's a world that truly like sucks you in, all the glitz and the glamour and the sequins. So yeah, I'll
Oh
definitely.
my God, you really, really, really have to send us videos. I want to see these. Yeah, this is amazing. And we will also add those to the show notes.
If she's okay, if you're okay with that. If not, you'll have to just scour YouTube and find them.
The Stars. Maybe it'll get me like a side gig. Everybody keeps asking, so when are you going to be on Dance with the Stars? And I like laugh because I'm like, you guys, I'm 32. You have to be like 12 to get on Dance with the Stars. But that's okay. Maybe I'll get like a little like spotlight on Dancing with the Stars.
I give people my side talent is opera.
Oh, amazing.
And people are always like, oh, when are you going to go on, American Idol or America's Got Talent? It's like, no.
I know. It's like they
never.
So many of those are like, unfortunately, it's like kind of like our prime, like the prime, for dancing. I've kind of missed my chance, but that's okay. That's why I do it. But
that means we get to do it for fun.
Yes, and I love it.
Yeah.
So super
Exactly.
Plus, I mean, I think we've all seen the videos of like the lady in her like 70s or whatever, and she's dancing with some guy who's like 20. Like, I want to be that lady. I want you to be that lady because I'm not coordinated enough.
I will be like 85 and still. I mean, there's literally, I've seen a woman in person that she was in her 80s and she was being flung around like ballroom.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, 100% is possible.
It's amazing. That inspires me. This was an awesome conversation. Absolutely love everything you're doing and love the business idea, everything you're talking about. This was such a great conversation. So thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us.
No, agreed. This was awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you, dear listeners, for listening to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. Check the show notes for all the ways you can get in touch with Amanda. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and review the podcast on whatever app it is that we are using these days to listen to podcasts. I can't tell. I'm old these days.
I know. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.